How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, today we're going to discuss 15 common questions that rookies may ask themselves. I got the question. I'm going to know why it's a concern. Got a couple of bullets that we're going to talk through, but I think this is going to be a very good dialogue. I'm going to be very relaxed today. We're just going to enjoy the dialogue, enjoy the discussion. I haven't done a really one-on-one for a while. And also, guys, if you get a chance, don't forget I do have books on the market. I have books on Amazon, and I have books also published by Blue 360 Media. So if you get a chance, please check out the links in my description. Okay, so the first question we got is, what should I do if an inmate challenges my authority? Now, mind you, guys, these are the questions that are coming from my comments from the many YouTube videos I've done throughout my time. So we're looking at from 2012 on. So I was able to pull about 15 of them. So what should I do if an inmate challenges my authority? So why is that a concern? So rookies worry about losing control or respect early on as they are still building confidence and authority. Guys, I want you to know something real quick. Authority is perception. As a rookie, you're going to be doing two things. You got to establish it and you got to maintain it. And that's going to be done for a while, at least for your first year or so. Establish, maintain, establish, maintain. Seniors, they may be more focused on maintaining. And yes, guys, seniors are still maintaining their authority every day through every interaction. I mean, literally moment by moment. I find for me, authority best sits in between the spectrum of being assertive, so not being aggressive, being assertive, and on the other side, being professionally empathetic and not being soft. So again, being assertive to being professionally empathetic, somewhere along the line of this spectrum is where your authority rests. So you got to try to figure out, where you're at in that spectrum. If you go too far, that's where you're going to start becoming inconsistent. Aggressive is not where you want to be your whole career, trust me. And you don't want to be too soft because obviously when you're too soft, you're not in control. The inmates are. And guys, I want to add something else when it comes to authority too, is that you have to be prepared to embrace conflict and be consistent. At the very beginning, the confidence that you have is not going to be inward. I don't have an experience. I don't really have discretionary effort. The profession's still new to me. So I need to find my confidence externally. Where's my resources? Where's my peers? They will help you. And the policies and procedures are very big for you to know at the very beginning because you are going to literally be reactionary based on what those policies and procedures say. And it's not because you're being petty. It's because you're stepping into the role. You have to be prepared for conflict. You're going to have to be prepared for being consistent when you're challenged. And also, another good thing about this is when it comes to conflict and consistency is that it's part of it is about letting the inmates know what you're going to tolerate and what you're not going to tolerate. But another part is you getting comfortable with it, you knowing within yourself what you're going to tolerate and what you're not going to tolerate. So some of the bullets I have here is authority is earned through consistency and professionalism, so not just rank, title, or position. Authority isn't just a one-time event. We talked about that. It's maintained daily through your actions and interactions. Focus on de-escalation techniques, including tone, body language, and strategic communication. Again, that's when feasible, but it makes sense. De-escalation shows control, and authority is about control. That's why aggressiveness doesn't work. It shows a lack of control, but assertive shows control. And even being assertive could be an effort to de-escalate. It's not about winning or losing. It's about resolving the issue. Don't get distracted by making it an either or, win versus lose. And I agree with that. The back and forths with inmates. Remember, guys, it's not about winning or losing. It's about resolving whatever the matter is. Inmates may be quick to make it personal. You have to be quick to make it professional. Follow protocols to back up decisions. And again, that's going to be at the very beginning. The rules, the policy, and procedures are going to be like a crutch at the beginning. And then eventually later on, as you start earning discretion, getting your experience, earning discretion, the policy and procedures become more like tools. And then you got know when and how to involve supervisors or colleagues for reinforcement. And that's probably going to be a lot at the very beginning. And I think your peers and your supervisors should be aware of that. Key insight: authority is not about power, it's about professionalism. Stay calm, consistent, and confident, and your actions will speak louder than your rank. Okay, so that was question 1. Question 2: how do I balance being firm but fair without showing favoritism? So why is this a concern? Rookies fear being perceived as unfair, which can damage relationships with inmates and create tension. So how to address it? So here's the bullets. Treat all inmates equally, adhering strictly to policies and procedures. And again, that's at the beginning. 100% you are going to be in reactionary mode. Inmates may test you, but will respect officers who are impartial and consistent. You see consistent coming up a lot. Because remember, if inmates look to manipulate or test boundaries, they're looking to break you away from being consistent. So you got to remember, consistency is key. Consistency is key. You have to stay consistent, because if at any point you lack consistency in your effort to achieve a correctional objective, it just sets the wrong tone, especially right at the very beginning, that the more you're challenged, the more you will break. Don't let emotions influence decision making, and that's true. And that's on either side. You know, angry, don't act out of anger, and don't act because you want to be their friend. You know, you want to keep things fair, you act within your prescribed role, the expectation. It's all dictated for you. All you got to do at the very beginning is follow suit. Any questions, ask your peers. Use documentation to maintain transparency and accountability, and engage with inmates respectfully without blurring the boundaries. Again, remember, guys, it's not a popularity contest. We're not looking to be liked. We're just looking to be effective at our job. So the key insight here is fairness is treating everyone by the same rule, not bending them to avoid conflict or gain favor. Now, granted, guys, there will be times where situations can cause us to shift a little bit from a consistency that we may have in reacting to something, and that's where the fairness comes in. But granted, you got to look at the context and be able to justify any shift from that consistency as related to the context. Sometimes you'll see that in procedures. Sometimes you'll see that the procedure just isn't working because this situation doesn't allow it. So I'm going to go ahead, and when I get my discretion through experience, trial and error, I may have to break away from consistently doing something and shift to doing it this way. And again, that's my effort to be fair, but there's a higher level context. There's a justification where if I was consistent in this manner through procedure, it just wouldn't work because the situation didn't allow it. So again, you also have to have a balance here. The situation will also tell you things, and that will help you adjust. But at the very beginning of your career, it's pretty much black and white. When it comes to any deviation, you may want to go to your senior staff or supervisor. I wouldn't advise that for you right off the get-go, because you got to be able to translate the context, and I don't think you learn that from, on day one. So again, rules, policy, procedures, chase conflict, be consistent, all that stuff. Okay, so what if I make a mistake? How will it affect my credibility? So why is that a concern? So rookies fear judgment from colleagues and inmates, thinking mistakes may permanently harm their reputation. So I got some bullets here. Acknowledge that mistakes are inevitable, especially when new. Reflect on mistakes and seek feedback to improve. Owning up to errors builds respect from colleagues and supervisors. Don't let self-doubt take over. Mistakes don't define your career. How you handle them does. And that's worth repeating, guys. Mistakes don't define your career. How you handle them does. And build a support system by leaning on experienced officers. So, guys, here's a little quote here. Mistakes don't ruin credibility. Refusing to take accountability does. Own your errors, learn, and move forward. And I agree with that. I want to repeat that. That's powerful. So mistakes don't ruin credibility. Refusing to take accountability does. Own your errors, learn, and move forward. For the most part, guys, the senior officers, the supervisors, they're going to know you're new, and they're not going to expect perfection. You yourself shouldn't expect perfection from yourself. Corrections is not a simple career; it's very complex. So don't dummy down the profession, and then when you make a mistake, you feel that, wow, how can I not do this? I'm just a guard. No, guys. This profession is extremely complex. There's a lot of decision making that's happening in real time, fluid. I mean, you are literally leaning into decision making while things are happening in front of you. You're acting on very limited information, so you're bound to make mistakes. There's a trial and error process. And with that said, there's learning through that experience. It's learning from successes, and it's also learning from your failures. Now, mind you, you should have good mentorship, which means that if you have good mentorship, they're not going to let you fail to a point where it's irreversible. But they may allow you to make mistakes as long as they're able to step in and help you correct it before it truly goes downhill. Because I think all of us in corrections knows that the best learning you get is kind of being thrown into the pool, but someone in the background there just so you don't drown. That's the caveat. So I'm not talking about sink or swim. I think that's a little aggressive. I think try to swim, but the moment I can't see you swimming, I'm going to jump in. But I want to give you autonomy. That's the key. So there's a balance there. I want to give you autonomy, but with some level of guidance when needed. And because I know for a fact, eventually when confidence builds, it builds from the outside in corrections. So there is a finesse in how good mentorship works. I want you to start doing things on your own, and then only when I need to come in, I will. And now, granted, when it comes to making a mistakes, how does it affect your credibility? I do agree that it's how you recover from it. Sometimes rookies may come in thinking that they have to impress, that they have to know everything. And sometimes what happens here, when they have that mindset, they don't come in humble, and they wind up pushing away people that want to help them, because maybe they're more concerned about vanity or how they look, when it's more about, I messed up and I need help. And if people see that you're willing to take accountability, that there's no excuse, people are going to want to help you. They're going to connect with that level of vulnerability. Now, granted, some senior officers may not have had good mentors, so they may think that it's best for you to figure out things on your own. But I'm going to tell you right now, that's not how it works. And all because you were put in that situation doesn't mean that you want to continue that legacy. So what I would be more concerned about here is how you view yourself. So at the end, if you do fail, if you do make a mistake, how are you going to pick yourself up from it? Who you're going to go to help give you constructive feedback so you can become better. And then in this case here, guys, and I mean it as I say it here, you can start embracing those mistakes. You can start embracing those failures. Because I'll tell you something, even as a senior officer, I don't know what someone needs to know until sometimes they make the mistake. I'm like, oh my God, let me help them with that because I forgot to teach them that. So mistakes could be very powerful. And I also want to mention one other thing when it comes to this. You're not in charge of the outcome. You're only in charge of your effort to slow things down. When it comes to decision making, and probably get this a little later on, but we want you to slow things down. So usually decisions are an effort to slow things down so we can gain control, gain momentum, and hopefully that momentum helps resolve or solve the problem. But a lot of times people, when they get an outcome that's favorable, they automatically think, well, I made a great decision. Sometimes you could make a decision based on very bad intent, but the outcome, you got lucky. And there are some people that make good decisions, great intent, and the outcome comes out pretty bad. So there's a finesse in connecting your decision making to the outcome, and you have to make sure it's done in a manner that motivates you, keeps you moving, and that's where your peer support comes in at the very beginning of your career. Okay, next question. How do I earn respect from my colleagues and inmates? Why is that a concern? Rookies may feel overlooked or undervalued due to their inexperience, which can impact their confidence. How to address it: show up on time, follow policies, and take the job seriously. Be consistent in enforcing rules and maintaining integrity. Respect goes both ways. Treat colleagues and inmates professionally and fairly. Demonstrate humility and eagerness to grow in the role. Avoid overconfidence, which can alienate both colleagues and inmates. The key insight here is respect is earned through consistency and integrity. People respect what they can count on. That's key. People can respect what they can count on. When it comes to dealing with the inmate population, guys, you have to be very wary that in your effort to be respected by the inmates, that you wind up not mixing that up with wanting to be liked by the inmates. When someone asks me what's the best way to be respected by the inmates, it's the same as being respected by your peers. Show up and do your job. It's that simple. I got a little breakdown here of people that chase for respect from the inmates and how it can lead to manipulation. So again, guys, you do want to have respect, but you don't have to chase for it. It's going to come automatically through how you do your prescribed role, what's expected of you. So if you're looking to chase respect, this is how it can lead to manipulation. First, you have overcompensation. So rookies or even experienced officers seeking respect may overcompensate by being overly lenient, bending rules, or making exceptions to gain favor with inmates. Manipulative inmates exploit this behavior, using it as a leverage to push boundaries even further. Blurring boundaries. In the quest for respect, officers might unconsciously blur professional boundaries, engaging in personal conversations or granting small favors. These actions give inmates an opening to test limits and manipulate the officer into doing more. So again, how are we defining respect? Desire for approval. Officers who place too much importance on being liked or accepted may prioritize approval over professionalism. Manipulative inmates often use flattery, pity, or charm offensives to exploit this desire, gradually gaining control over the officer's actions. So you're looking to be respected, or you're looking to be liked, or you're looking to be popular. Because at that point, you might as well just get the approval from the inmates to do your job. Respect will come when you do what's expected of you. Erosion of authority. Seeking respect at all costs can undermine an officer's authority. Inmates may perceive the officer as weak or easily influenced, which can encourage further manipulation attempts. And emotional vulnerability. Officers chasing respect may become emotionally invested in how inmates perceive them. Manipulative inmates can exploit this vulnerability by withdrawing respect, creating guilt, or offering it conditionally to control the officer's behavior. So how do you want to avoid this? Redefine respect. Respect is not about being liked. It's about being consistent, professional, and fair. Inmates will respect officers who enforce boundaries and follow procedures, even if they don't necessarily like them. Stay grounded in policies. Always rely on policies and procedures to guide decisions, ensuring consistency and fairness, especially at that beginning. Focus on integrity. Respect gained through professionalism and integrity is sustainable and unshakable. Inmates may test you, but consistency will earn their acknowledgement over time. And that's great, because that means that respect is not conditional. And the consistency here is how I do my job, what's expected of me within my prescribed role. Build confidence and authority. Trust that your authority, when exercised professionally, will naturally lead to respect. Chasing it directly often has the opposite effect. And there's a quote here: respect isn't chased. It's earned through consistency and integrity. That should be a shirt. When you stop seeking approval, manipulation loses its power. So that's a unique way of answering that question. I don't think we've ever answered it in that way before. But again, let the job, your prescribed role, what's expected of you, get the respect you need from the inmate population. Next question. What is the best way to handle the stress and pressure of this job? Why is this a concern? Well, the high stress environment can be overwhelming, especially for rookies who may lack coping strategies. How to address it? You acknowledge the emotional toll correction work can take. Develop coping mechanisms like exercise, mindfulness, or hobbies. Don't isolate yourself. Share concerns with colleagues and supervisors. Set clear boundaries to avoid bringing work stress home, and be aware of employee assistance programs, EAPs, or counseling services. Now, here's the key insight here, the quote. Stress is inevitable, but burnout is preventable. Stress is inevitable, but burnout is preventable. Prioritize self-care and lean on your team for support. Guys, it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to identify what is making you stressed, whatever's in the moment, anxiety, what's to come. And it's okay to admit that this profession isn't for you. All because you remain in this profession doesn't mean you're real badass. It just means there's things that you can cope with that others may not be able to. So it's not a sign of weakness to say, you know what, this profession isn't for me. I think I have to go somewhere else. Hey, bravo on the courage on that, because most people don't do that. And what happens is a code winds up happening. They freeze, they don't react, and all because they didn't have the courage to face themselves and what they were capable of doing. And another thing when it comes to stress and anxiety is that there's you, and then there's you in the uniform. And you have to address both. But you that's not in the uniform, the ones that maybe your family members can kind of help you cope with, they're the ones that can truly help you wear the uniform because they know you. So when it comes to dealing with stress and anxiety, make sure you maintain connections with people who know you, who know what you're about, not just defined by the uniform, but who know you. And this cutting your family out of the professional side, that doesn't work, guys. That just separates you from probably what it will be your greatest resource. So again, when it comes to stress and anxiety, be vulnerable. If something affects you in the moment, address it. If that's talking to a peer, talking to your family, just don't let it subside. And, again, know that there's the professional you and the personal you. And you really can't address the professional you unless you address the personal you first, if that makes sense. All right. So next question. How do I recognize when an inmate is trying to manipulate me? Oh, I love these topics. Why is it a concern? Rookies may not yet understand subtle manipulation tactics, leaving them vulnerable to being exploited. How to address it? Learn red flags like excessive flattery, feigned helplessness, or testing boundaries. Recognize that manipulation often begins with small favors that escalate over time. Avoid sharing personal details with inmates. Maintain professionalism. Be aware of manipulation tactics like guilt trips, pity plays, and charm offensive. And trust your instincts and seek advice from seasoned officer. Here's the insight here. Quote, manipulation thrives on blurred boundaries. Stay professional and don't let small favors turn into big problems. Guys, this is all about conflict too. Inmates may choose the friendly route, the over-friendly route when they choose to manipulate because it's harder to tell that type of person no. I think for me, when an inmate tried to intimidate me, which is still a form of manipulation, I recognized it immediately. It was surface. I see it. And I expected resistance, so I leaned into it. You're not going to threaten me. I have a job to do, and if needed, I have backup here. I'm not here to be a tough guy, but I'm not going to let you make me sway. The other side's a bit complicated. So we're talking about the side of over friendly, the charm. That demands you address the conflict and call what they're doing out to the surface. Hey, listen, I know what you're trying to do here, and it's not going to work. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to do this. Now, granted, the policy and procedures matter here because you're going to lean on that first. So I wish the agencies, most agencies, obviously send their officers to the academy first. Some don't. And for the ones that don't, shame on you. And the reason why I'm saying shame on you is because when you're in the academy, they're going to instill in you policies and procedures. And they are going to give you universal precaution. They're going to teach you the absolutes of working in this field of corrections, which means that they're going to teach you how to find the wolf because they have to. Universal precaution matters in this profession because you got to be wary. There's a wolf amongst the sheep. So they're going to teach you the absolute. And then through time, you figure out how it applies and how it works. With that said, how you deal with the tactics that inmates play, you got to trust your gut on this too. Especially when you're coming from the academy, there's stuff that's being ingrained and you're going to feel it. Because even when I was relatively new, I felt that, hey, you know what? Something doesn't feel right. This inmate's too friendly or whatever it is. Something doesn't feel right. So once I felt it, the courage came in acting on it, calling that effort that the inmate's trying to do to the surface. And I didn't care if I was wrong or right. I wasn't looking to be socially approved. I was just going to call it for what it is and be safe. And if I was wrong, I have no problem apologizing. You know what? I thought you were trying to do this. I was wrong. It is what it is. But what about if I'm right? So again, I think the other part is recognizing that feeling and then being ready to call what's happening to the surface and engage in that conflict, engage in that back and forth. You can't avoid it. I remember a story where there was an officer that used to brag about how he used to tell the inmates every time they asked him a personal question, and it was usually about his children, he would lie about the number he had. I have 3 children. I have 5 children. I have 7 children. I'm listening to him one day and I'm like, hey, why can't you just tell them it's none of their business? He goes, well, it's funny. I was like, no, it's not funny. I think the problem is you can't accept the conflict. Like, honestly, you're telling them all these different numbers because you're looking to avoid the conflict of just telling that inmate it's none of your business. I'm not sitting here telling inmates when they ask me something personal and lying and making up stories. I'm telling them it's none of their business. What else do you need to know? It just keep it moving forward. Let them know that this is not, we're not friends here. It's a job for us to do. It's professional, and there's no need for you to know my personal life. And granted, that's protecting my family, my loved ones. Of course, I'm going to have zero tolerance for that. I'm not going to start making up stories because eventually there could be hints of truths in there, or someone's going to figure it all out. No, it's just no. Don't worry about it. Don't ask me about it, and keep it moving. Let's get to the next question. Okay, now we got, what should I do if I feel unsafe or threatened? So why is this a concern? Rookies may feel unsure about how to handle threatening situations without overreacting or freezing. How to address it? We want to fall back on your training and practice situational awareness. Maintain composure to de-escalate the situation. Don't hesitate to call for backup from colleagues or supervisors. Be aware of high-risk areas or situations where danger is heightened, and debrief after incident to process and learn from them. Your insight, the key insight, the quote, your safety comes first. Stay calm, follow your training, and never hesitate to call for backup. I want to add something else to this. This is more tactical, but I want to add something else. Take threats seriously. Every inmate has the ability to carry out a threat, so take it seriously, document it, follow up if it's picked up by the investigative authority. You can ask questions in regards to how severe this threat is, questions that are specific to that inmate. Are they a gang member? Maybe the investigative division is checking the phone calls to see if the threat it looks like it's being carried out. And hopefully management does what they need to do to protect you as well. I mean, there is definitely the duty to warn if you've been threatened, but you're not aware of it. But the last thing you want is for the threats to discourage you from doing your job. You have to expect that you are going to be threatened, especially if you're a good officer, because you're stopping them from doing what they want to do. So this is part of the business. So you got to be prepared for it. But then also the agency has to be prepared to protect you so you could be effective at doing your job. So if there's a threat that you feel is getting to you, then I would definitely talk to either management or the investigative division to see if there's something that could be done to alleviate that concern so you can go ahead and be more effective. And it's okay if a threat gets you. That's the stress, that's the anxiety, but now you have to step up and do something about it. Threats, it falls into what also could be unknown. When's it going to happen? How's it going to happen? Is it going to happen? So you got to try to figure out what's the best way to alleviate those unknowns. And usually it's working with management, the investigative division, and going ahead and seeing what they could do to protect you just in case the inmate's looking to carry out something. And that's when we all work out together. But I will say this. Sometimes staff may just utilize a threatening charge because they don't want the inmate in their unit. And we got to be careful of that because that loses out on its credibility. If you have staff that have gotten accustomed just to write threatening charges, just to maneuver the inmate, then real threats lose out on its seriousness. And it's not that we want that to happen. It erodes the system. So then when you really have a threat, people are looking at the other threats and it's like, well, this one probably not that serious as well. So I would be very careful of also misusing that. So again, if it's a real threat, do what you got to do. Protect yourself, and the agency should support you. Okay, so number 9. Let me see, where am I? Right here. How can I enforce rules without creating unnecessary conflict? So why is it a concern? Rookies may worry that enforcing rules will escalate tension or damage rapport with inmates. And that shouldn't matter. At least not the rapport part. How to address it. Ensure inmates understand the rules and consequences of breaking them. Focus on major violations rather than micromanaging minor issues. I'm going to just step back on that one for a second. When you're new, I want you to do both. because you got to embrace conflict. Later on, when you become more senior, that's going to apply. Focus on major violations rather than micromanaging minor issues. Because even as a supervisor, when you become more senior, a supervisor may say, hey, you got to start handling these things on your own. You don't need me for these things, unless it becomes persistent and repetitive. The first few go-arounds, I want to see how you manage this, the smaller things. But as a rookie, supervisors are expecting you to write up every little thing because they know you're being tested. So this is a good chance for you to start embracing that conflict. Use calm professional communication to avoid raising hostility. Enforce rules consistently to reduce perceptions of favoritism, and maintain a professional demeanor to build cooperation. Key insight: firm doesn't mean forceful. Enforce the rules with consistency and respect to minimize pushback. I want to mention this. So it says, how can I enforce rules without creating unnecessary conflict? And again, I think that's what your position of authority. So some of these may bleed into each other. But remember, I talked about the spectrum. I talked about assertive to professionally empathetic, and you don't want to go on the outer extremes, which would be more of aggressive and soft. I think the unnecessary conflict deals with how you're approached, how you do your approach with pushing a correctional objective, how you approach it, how you engage with the inmates to give the directive. You don't want to give it aggressively. Again, it's more assertive, or in some cases, inmates know, hey, this has to be done. And most cases, they may not even challenge it. But when we're talking about unnecessary conflict, I think what they mean by unnecessary conflict is how you carry out the directive. How do you go ahead and push that directive to the inmate population? I think that's the key. So you want to kind of balance between assertive and being professionally empathetic, but you definitely don't want to go to the aggressive side or the softer side. Now, granted, you could expect conflict from the inmate. In some cases, they could be resistant to certain things, but that's expected. I wouldn't say that's unnecessary conflict. That's maybe from their end, but for you, it's a way to reinforce what needs to be said. So sometimes when the inmate goes to resist slightly, that gives you a chance to give the justification to reinforce both why the directive is needed, but also your ability to embrace the role of your authority. So I don't think it's unnecessary at that point, because there's a learning point when they go to resist, as long as it's not an aggressive resistance, more of a questioning type of resistance. But with that said, again, with unnecessary conflict, just watch your approach and expect resistance from the inmates. I mean, it is what it is, but it does give you a chance to embrace that role. All right, let's see. How do I maintain my personal values while working in such a tough environment? Why is it a concern? Well, rookies fear becoming jaded or losing their sense of self while adapting to a high-stress, often cynical environment. How do you address it? Identify what's most important to you, such as integrity or fairness, and stick to those values. Resist a pull to adopt a cynical or apathetic outlook. Surround yourself with colleagues who align with your values. Focus on a bigger picture. And basically focus on the bigger picture of public safety and rehabilitation, and celebrate small victories where you uphold your values. Key insight: your values are your compass. When the environment gets tough, let your integrity guide you. I want to add something to this, though, too, that matters. They're your values. They're your beliefs when you're challenged and you stay connected to them. I've been in this profession for over 22 years. I don't think I've changed for the most part. So even though this has been a very challenging career for me, and trust me, it has, I have not had an easy career, like most. But with that said, I've held true to what my values and beliefs are. So when I entered into what could be a whirlwind, I held my values and my beliefs tight, so I wouldn't let go of them, and I kept them close to me. With that said, for people that go into the profession and all of a sudden they lose a sense of self, and everything's all over the place, and they come out the other end changed. Sometimes I ask, well, this profession is an intentional profession, especially towards your well-being. So when you're getting challenged, this is the moment to reinforce your values, reinforce your beliefs, and not just let it go and give up, because at that point you've accepted it. So I would say here, what's the best way to learn and grow? Best way to learn and grow. The next one: how do I maintain my personal values while working in such a tough environment? know what they are, and have them be your anchor. Stick with them. Stick with them for everything you got. Because if you by any chance go in and all of a sudden they're all over the place and they change, then maybe it wasn't really you to begin with. Because most of the people that stick to those values and stick to those beliefs it's usually because they've been challenged and they had to reinforce it. But if you can't get through the challenge, then I would question of how much do you really believe in that anyway, or is it just talk? All right, next one. What's the best way to learn and grow in this profession? So, why is this a concern? Rookies who want to succeed may feel unsure about how to navigate the learning curve or find growth opportunities. So you want to seek mentorship from experienced officers who can guide you. Take advantage of professional development programs or training opportunities. Observe and learn from seasoned officers. Don't be afraid to ask questions or seek advice, and set long-term goals and work towards them step by step. Growth starts with curiosity. Ask questions, seek mentors, and never stop learning. So growth is always intentional, guys. You got to step into the role. You got to embrace it. You got to understand what it is that you also want from this profession in the long run, because that will also help guide your learning. But for me, my biggest thing, and it's probably advice you already heard already, is you got to go in humble. Don't expect to be perfect. Learn from the mistakes, learn from your successes, and seek those who align with your values. Find someone that can help grow you in this profession, or find multiple people. I mean, for me, I had multiple mentors because each one was a mentor in different areas. But at the end of the day, growing doesn't just happen on the job. Growing also happens in what you do after the job. Am I picking up any books? Am I reading anything? There's a lot of good YouTube channels out here. There's a lot of good Facebook groups to learn from books. So there's a lot of intentional effort here when it comes to learning and growing. But I would also say, besides just reading, it's also applying. The back end of a good, solid education is applying what you've learned. So that's what kind of makes, knowledge into wisdom, is actually going out there, trying it, trial and error. So I would think at the very beginning of your career, it's going to be a lot of trial and error, a lot of application as well. And I think that's what matters. And also, I want to add understanding why things are done. I mean, you embrace your role, but then you also have to embrace how that role connects to the bigger picture, the profession itself. So why are the things done? This goes beyond the what or the how. So you got to start asking the right questions that give you an understanding of why you're doing things the way you need to do them. And I'll tell you something, growth is never ending. And if you're bored, it's because you choose to be bored. That's it. That's all I got to say. If you're bored, you choose to be bored. Get that curious mentality. Raise your hand. Volunteer. You're in charge of your own growth and development. All right. So what should I do if I feel overwhelmed and unsure about my decisions? Why is it a concern? Rookies often second guess their decisions due to lack of experience, which can lead to hesitation or self-doubt. How to address it? Trust your training. Your foundational knowledge is there to guide you. Break decisions into small, manageable steps to reduce feelings of being overwhelmed, if possible. Seek mentorship from experienced officers for reassurance and guidance, and focus on learning rather than perfection. Each situation is an opportunity to improve. Key insight: confidence doesn't mean always being right. It means trusting your training and learning from every decision. We kind of discussed this earlier before in we did do it earlier. Maybe, sorry, I forget, but we did discuss parts just a little bit earlier. But I will say this again, just as a reminder, guys, when it comes to trusting in your decision making, remember, it's about the effort to lean into the situation, to slow things down. And I'll be honest with you, with every decision you make, look for feedback. Ask questions. Again, it's questions of curiosity, and the people that are trying to help you are not judging you. And the big thing here is you're not expected to be perfect. So it's okay to ask questions of vulnerability, to go over the incident in your head, try to figure out other ways that things could have been done. Even if it was a perfect decision, try to understand why that decision worked. See if it was really a good decision, or did the outcome, you're just lucky. So I think this is really just trial and error. But the good thing about this, when it comes to decision making and learning the process and learning, if what you're doing is the right thing, is that's what leads to the experience. So experience by itself is just experience, but reflecting evaluated experience, reflecting on the experience is what turns knowledge into wisdom. So this is a good thing to start reflecting on and seeing if what I'm doing is correct or if it's not correct, and then leaning on those who have done it before and say, hey, this is what happened. I was like, your thoughts on it. And then literally listening to them. Listen to them, not because you're prepared to rebuttal, just listen to them, take it in and say, thank you for your advice. And, I'm going to sit on that for a little bit. Okay. How do I deal with inmates who try to test me because I'm new? Why is it a concern? So new officers are often tested by inmates to see how far they can push boundaries, which can undermine authority if not handled properly. So how to address this? Stay consistent in enforcing rules and boundaries from day one. Avoid emotional reactions, remain calm and professional at all times. Document and report incidences to show accountability and maintain transparency. Lean on experienced colleagues for advice and assistance when necessary. Key insight: the first impression you set is the foundation of how inmates will treat you. Stay consistent, professional, and firm. Now, guys, we did discuss this briefly before, but I want to add something here. So the question specifically says, how do I deal with inmates who try to test me because I'm new? Okay, so granted, what does an inmate believe a new officer is about? They believe that there's a chance they could be inconsistent. There's a chance that they may not know what they're doing. There's a chance that they won't seek help. There's a bunch of things, right? So granted, it's not so much about being new because you can't change that, but you can fill the gaps of those areas that they believe a new officer, the stereotype of a new officer, fits into. So granted, if they feel that they can test you because you're new, because maybe that will weaken your consistency, then you remain more consistent. If they feel, well, you're new, you're not going to know a lot about this job, so I'm going to test that. Okay, then show them your resources. Show them that you're connected to your senior staff. So the thing is you have to understand, what does a new officer look like to an inmate in an effort to be challenged, and then you go ahead and fill the gaps. So I may not be able to change that I'm new, but I know these are the areas you're going to try to challenge me in. So I'm going to go ahead and try to strengthen those areas at the very beginning of my career. So I still may be new, but I'm not going to fit in the stereotype of what you believe a new officer is or how that new officer carries out what they do. And I think that's the test. Because again, you can't change being new. All you can do is do it day by day until you're not. Okay, so let's do the next question. How do I know when to step in versus when to let things play out? So this is very situational. This is not an easy question to answer, but maybe we could try a generalized approach. So why is it a concern? Rookies may struggle with deciding when to intervene in inmate interactions, fearing they'll either overstep or appear passive. How to address it? Observe the situation carefully before acting. Awareness is key. Use your instincts. If something feels wrong, trust your gut. Following protocols for intervention to avoid unnecessary risk. Consult with seasoned officers about handling ambiguous situations to build confidence. Key insight: not every situation requires action, but every situation requires awareness. I like that a lot, actually. So not every situation requires action, but every situation requires awareness. So guys, this question is a bit tough because every situation is going to be different. So there's really not a catch-all, but I could do this though. Making a decision to do something, even if it's just clearing the environment, making a call on the radio, is stepping in. I don't want to equate stepping in as you have to go in there and put your hands on somebody, because safety and security has to come first. So I think in this point here, it's just when to make a decision. And I'll grant it, guys. A lot of stuff that we do in corrections, we have to react. We're in that moment, but you have to make sure you do it safely. So you have to kind of know when it's safe to intervene and when it's not. And also, how do I make it safer so we can intervene? I'll clear the environment after I call the code, and I'll work on doing that so the response team can come and help me with this issue. So this is really about just, making the judgment on scene, because there's so many different areas here that there's no general catch-all. So all I would say is step in doesn't always mean you're putting your hands on inmates and moving them. Step in could just be making a decision to make it safer for when those that have to come in to resolve the issue or react to the issue. I've done what I can, because even just clearing the environment, calling the code, that's what matters. And again, when in doubt, you got to make a decision, because God forbid something plays out and doesn't go the way you thought it would. Now you sat there doing nothing. I remember an incident. I want to share a quick story with you where I was working the kitchen area and I was new, and now I know why horse playing is a charge. At first, I thought it was one of the stupid charges we had to write. but I was sweating the rules at the very beginning. So I was writing them on the spot, simple charges. And then one day I saw two inmates going back and forth, looked like they were fighting. I called the code. And then I looked again and then they're laughing, just having a good time. And I'm like, oh man, they were horse playing. And code came, the team came, they addressed the issue, handcuffed both the girls, went to lock, and they were like, yo, gee, we were just playing around. And I'm sitting here like, man, the officers, the lieutenant's going to be mad at me. I can't believe I called the code. And then the lieutenant actually was, he goes, what happened here? I said, you know what, man, I admitted it. I said, I may have messed up. I thought they were fighting and they were really horse playing, and I shouldn't have called the code. He goes, why shouldn't you have called the code? You didn't know that. You acted immediately to prevent something from worse happening. So it turned out to be that they were horse playing. But at the time you made that decision, you didn't know that. So I think it was a good decision. And I felt so good about myself. So now I also know why horse playing is a charge too. All right, let's see. You learn a lot in just one moment. How do I maintain a professional demeanor when inmates provoke me? This is simple, guys. So why is it a concern? Rookies may feel personally attacked by inmates, provocations, and struggles to separate their emotions from their response. How to address it? Remember that provocation is often a tactic to test limits or gain control. Using calm techniques like controlled breathing to stay composed. Focus on the behavior, not the words. Don't take insults personally. Shift your attention to resolving the situation professionally rather than reacting emotionally. That's key. I want to get to that. And your reaction determines their power. Stay calm and you stay in control. Remember, don't make it personal. You make it professional. I had an incident where I had an inmate. I was giving her a directive. She was doing it, but she was just saying things that were, I felt at the time, challenging my authority, and I wanted to win, and I was chasing after the win, and we were going back and forth. Mind you, she was in an environment where inmates were kind of encouraging her. So I lost my cool for a second, and that was pride, really. I was chasing pride. I didn't want my authority challenged at the very beginning of my career like that, but yet she was still doing it. So I had the compliance, but she was just talking. Senior officer let it play out. I thought that was pretty good because I think that I needed to feel this moment. Then he called me in. He goes, hey, how'd you do there? What was that about? And I said, I'm trying to tell her to clean. And she's questioning everything. And then just kind of basically, I don't tell these other inmates to clean, and just, showboating. And he goes, well, looks like you got on a pedestal too, because you were going back and forth, and he was right. There were other inmates there. And I felt that if this was a dialogue just between me and her, it wouldn't have gone back and forth. It's just that I felt that she challenged me in front of others. Now I'm chasing after my pride. So he goes, you talk to that inmate aside by herself, you're going to get a different inmate. You just can't do it there. Was she still doing what had to be done? Yes. Talk to the inmate aside later on a private side, and totally different inmate. And rest of my days there, she was never a problem. But how I reacted in that moment was a good learning point. It was more about the win. I let my emotions get to me a bit. But having said that, the best response here is they get personal. You still have to remain professional. There's nothing easy in this job. So that's another thing that you just have to maintain that professionalism. And when you do pull that inmate aside, controlled, safe, maybe with a supervisor or another peer, doesn't matter, but make sure it's safe. You could get a different inmate. 9 times out of 10, you'll get a different inmate. All right, last question. What is the best way to build confidence in this role? Kind of discussed it, but we'll just go over one more time. Many rookies feel uncertain about their abilities early on and need practical ways to build confidence over time. So how to address it? Set small, achievable goals to measure progress. Reflect on daily wins, no matter how small, just to build momentum. Seek constructive feedback from supervisors and act on it. Rely on your team. Teamwork builds trust and boosts confidence. And remember that confidence comes with time and experience, so be patient with yourself. And the quote here is, confidence is built one success at a time. Celebrate progress, not perfection. Guys, you need a plan when you come in this profession. You need something that you are progressing towards, so you're going in the right direction. I feel sometimes that's where the departments may fail. Once you get out of the academy, they just kind of assign you anywhere. And at the end of the day, that doesn't really help out. At the end of the day, what am I progressing towards? So that's where mentorship can come in. That's where you yourself can come in and decide, like, hey, this is where I want to be at a certain time. And those little achievable steps matter because they keep you motivated. They let you know that you're going in the right direction. I mean, sometimes even feedback from a supervisor just to acknowledge where you're headed matters. Because sometimes you're doing all these things, you don't know, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? And the supervisor or the peer can come and say, hey, you're doing a great job. Keep going this way. So whatever goals you're setting for yourself, it's working, and maybe I can help you set some. But remember, At the very beginning, the confidence is what's around you. And then eventually it comes here through experience. So it's a shift. But you'll know when it happens. That's all I have to say. You'll know when that happens. You'll know when you're relying on the trust in yourself, because it just happens. So it's a great gift that you give yourself when you start just stepping into the role, leaning on the experience, the evaluated experience. That means the extra effort of not just, living in the moment, but also going back and reflecting on it. And then eventually, for those that really invest in that, they start kind of feeling that confidence a lot quicker than those that don't. And next thing you know, discretionary effort comes in, and you're just moving in the right direction. Just moving in the right direction, and people around you will see it. You're confident with your role. You've embraced conflict. You embraced consistency. You held on to your values. You're unshakable, and you'll have a good career, a great career. As always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. Hope this helps for our rookies. As always, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.